I'm trying to get out there. I know they're waiting. Good gracious. Hey, everybody. How you doing this morning? It's cold. I was out in the cold, and I'm having to work my face out because I'm having to thaw out. Good morning. Welcome. We hope it's a little warmer in here. If it's not, you can blame our drummer, Cody, because he insists that it be as cold as a freezer in here. But no, I understand. It needs to be cooler. But welcome to Village Church. We don't normally start talking about our drummer, but when we do, it's today. So yeah, he loves it. Welcome to Village. Today's your first time with us here. These are what we call first cards, and basically, if you fill it out, take it to the information desk, they'll give you a free gift. I mean, who doesn't like free gifts? So there's that for you. If you're tuning in online, we're glad that you are hanging out with us this morning. Just a few things as we get rolling. Tonight at 6 o'clock, Hub students, we will be here having games and groups, a great message. You want to be here tonight for Hub. If you came ready to give this morning, the baskets are out in the lobby. The one labeled Village Offering is out there. Thank you. Your gifts here, your generosity here makes incredible things happen. It allows us to minister to our students in a way that we love to be able to do each Sunday night. So thank you as you come ready to give in that way. Couple of announcements regarding dates that are coming up, okay? I guess it would be 2 weeks from today. 2 weeks from today, it is Palm Sunday, okay, on April 2nd, Palm Sunday. So just because we like to give folks a heads up.
That's just the Easter before Sunday.
What's that? Before Easter. The Sunday before Easter. Yes, Sunday before Easter. It's going to be Palm Sunday. And on that day, we're going to celebrate communion together in our morning service, okay? Here's why we tell you that. Because you are so good at inviting your friends. You're great at inviting your friends that maybe don't come to church. And we like to be able to tell folks, so they have a heads up, that you can say, hey, here's what we're going to be doing this morning, okay? Just so you can know and they can know as they come and we celebrate the Lord's Supper together, communion, on the 2nd, okay, on Palm Sunday. Then the next Sunday is Easter, or as we folks in Georgia call that Sunday, the day before they go back to school. So, you know, the spring break, Georgia folks, they get it the first week of April, Hayesville folks, the second week of April. But on the 9th is Easter Sunday, and we're going to be having 2 services that day, okay, at 9 and 11, all right? So be looking out for that. More details will come in VMail this week. You can sign up for VMail at the information desk there for our weekly correspondence. That'd be great. All right, so those are 2 dates to remember. We're excited to be together this morning in the middle. Well, I guess we're kind of halfway through March Madness, which has started this week. We do a Village Bracket Challenge here, and I'm not going to tell you who's at the bottom because I think it's me. So it's been one of those years. But
everybody's at the bottom.
Everybody's at the bottom, yeah, except Princeton.
That's right, yeah.
Princeton.
And Fairleigh Dickinson.
You know, we can actually claim Princeton Village. I don't know if you knew
right.
this. We
That's
can
right.
claim Princeton because our own Allison Thomas is at Princeton. So, way to go, Princeton, I guess.
She's a fighting, what are
She's
those
a
things?
fighting, I think they're Tigers. Are they
Tigers? I don't know.
Anybody? Fact check? Yes, we got
Tigers.
some yeses
Somebody
out
said
there.
so.
The
We got
Fighting Tigers, there you go. And they beat the Missouri Tigers yesterday.
Oh.
How do you cheer for that? Like, go our Tigers? How
Yeah.
do you do that when
Tiger
there's 2
Showdown.
Tigers
Yeah,
playing?
that's terrible.
Tiger Showdown. All right. So here's the question as you stand up and say hello to the people around you. Tell somebody who you got in your bracket, or if you're done, if you're cooked or whatever, or if you're still going strong, or if you're like, what's basketball? Hurry up with baseball. Okay? So let's stand up, say hello to the people around you.
March
We'll come back
Madness?
singing.
How's your bracket, Robbie?
Man, my bracket never got formed.
Hey,
I miss the due date every year. Sometimes you let me cheat and put it in later.
I should have let you get in. They're officially, from what I saw, out of tens of millions of brackets filled out in the United States, 0 perfect brackets left. I guess
Gets
Jesus
us every
didn't do a
time.
bracket.
It's because I didn't fill mine out, I guess. Hey, well, good morning, everybody. Y'all doing all right this morning? Man, I've been
I'm good.
traveling. I'm glad to get to be here this
Yeah,
morning.
man.
And me and Tyler halfway south
Yeah, welcome
to
home.
Central America. We're
That's
back.
right. Yeah.
But, hey, well, it's good to be with you. We're going to sing a new song here in a little bit. But man, I love getting to sing with you guys and get to sing to a God who loves us and cares for us, man. And if you haven't heard that story this morning, maybe this is your first time in church for a while. But, man, God loves you, and he wants to meet you right where you're at this morning. So this first song is called Joy in the House of the Lord. And there should be joy, but if you're not there this morning, maybe the rest of us can kind of sing it for you. So we just invite you to sing along with us. We're going to have a great time singing together. If you don't know the words will be on the screen behind me. Check it out. Worship the God who was, worship the God who is, worship the God who evermore will be. He opened the prison doors, he parted the raging seas. My God, he holds the victory. Yeah. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. Oh, oh, oh. We shout out your praise. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who saves. We sing to the God who always makes a way. 'Cause he hung up on that cross and he rose up from that grave. My God, still rolling stones away. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We shout out in praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out in praise. We were the beggars, now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by his grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. We were the beggars, now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by his grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. Oh, oh, oh. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise.
Well, good morning. I hope there's joy in the house of the Lord for you. I don't know what you walked through this week or maybe even what season of life that you're walking in, but the scriptures tell us that we can have joy because of what's ahead of us regardless of what's going on around us, and that joy is found in a heavenly Father, a God who calls us by name. And Robbie said a minute ago that we're going to teach you a song this morning, and it's one that we've been looking at for a little bit now, but I just love it because it's our story. And it's just a song it's called He Changed My Name. That when we became followers of Christ, when we put our faith in Him, that we become sons and daughters, that He creates us, makes us into something new, gives us a new hope, a new future, new opportunities. We're just going to sing this out because it's our story, and I want to teach you this chorus. It goes like this. You changed my name. You changed my name from too far gone to saved by grace, and now I am forever changed. Oh, because you changed my name. Sing that. You changed my name. You changed my name from too far gone to saved by grace, and now I am forever changed. Oh, because you changed my name.
My name was lost till your love reached out. You rescued me. Now my name is found. I was a slave to my sin and shame. Those chains fell off when you changed my name. You changed my name. You changed my name from too far gone to saved by grace, and now I am forever changed. All because you changed my name.
You called me out from the grave. I knew the old is gone. Now my name is new. I once was guilty, but not anymore. You paid my price. Now my name is yours. You paid my price. Now my name is yours. You changed my name. You changed my name from too far gone to saved by grace. Now I am forever changed. All because you changed my name. I don't have to answer to any name that the enemy tries to call me. I don't have to answer to any name, the chosen child of God. I don't have to answer to any name that the enemy tries to call me. I don't have to answer to any name, the chosen child of God. Oh, you changed my name. You changed my name from too far gone to saved by grace, and now I am forever changed. All because you changed my name. All because you changed my name. You changed my name. You changed my name from too far gone to saved by grace, and now I am forever changed. Oh, because you changed my name. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need Oh, rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness, on your faithfulness. Oh.
I'm calling on the God Jacob, whose love endures through generations. I know that you will keep your covenant. I'm calling on the God of Moses, the one who opened up the ocean. To do the same thing for. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Yeah. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness. On your faithfulness,
I'm calling on the God of Mary, whose favor rests upon the lowly. I know with you all things are possible. I'm calling on the God of David. I love it. Shepherd boy courageous, I may not face Goliath, but I've got my own giant. Oh God, my God, I need you. Oh God, my God, I need you now. How I need you now. Oh rock of ages, I'm standing on your Oh, rock of ages, I'm standing on your faithfulness, on your faithfulness.
Heavenly Father, God, we are standing on your faithfulness this morning. God, thank you for that reminder that you're the same yesterday, today, and forever. God, that you can be trusted. God, help us to all remember to lean into you, to be reminded that you are the same God, and you're there providing for us for our every need. God, we trust you this morning. We thank you for the time that we've had together to get to be able to sing and to worship you. God, and for our hearts to be encouraged. Just thank you for this time together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You guys can go ahead and grab a seat and check out this video.
Well, good morning again. Everybody good by now? Did you make it? It's about 15 minutes worth of music there. Some of you are like, okay, we're good still? Great. Well, welcome to Village. My name is Andrew. I'm the lead pastor. And man, we're really glad that you are hanging out today. If you join us online, thanks for clicking on and joining in. We love that you are with us wherever you are. And I don't know about you, but I am loving the longer days already. Anybody loving the longer days? Okay, all you standard time people that are upset about it, get over it. I'm just kidding, man. I heard some sleep professor this past week going, it's really not good for us. I said, well, then I'll take the unhealth because I love these longer days. And I didn't love going through that time change last weekend. That was brutal. I still am recovering from that. But the longer days, I'll take. I love it, all the extra daylight. Man, I just want to jump in today. I want to tell you a funny story. I heard the story this week. I thought it was funny, so I'll tell you. Maybe you'll think it's funny. We'll know at the end. But a story about a dad. There was this dad, and he was driving down the road with his 5-year-old son in the back seat of the car. They're just driving down the road. And as they were driving, the son asked a question from the dad. He said, from the back, he said, hey, Dad, can I ask you a question? He said, here's the question. How do you spell God? And man, when he asked this, the dad, he gets all excited inside, and he's just so proud. He's almost emotional, trying not to show it to his son, right? And he's getting there because in his mind, he's thinking this. All of those nighttime prayers that we've prayed, all of those Bible stories all of those Sundays where we've gotten up and grinded it out and made it to church for children's church and gotten there for all the difference, all of those things, it's all paying off. My son is 5 years old, falling in love with the God that I love. He wants to know he wants to know how to write his name. This is so great. And so he looks up in his rearview mirror and he tells his son, he sees him waiting for the answer. He says, son, here's how you spell God. You spell it G-O-D. So you spell God. Right? And so he's just so proud. And he keeps glancing back in the mirror. He's watching his 5-year-old trying to grind out a G-O and a D, and then he looks like he's about finished, and the son glances back up. He says, hey, Dad, hey, thanks. And then I've got one more question. How do you spell Zilla? You'll see it in a minute. And, man, the dad is crushed, right? This is brutal. It's like, he just wanted Godzilla. And Poor dad. But the point of this is sometimes, like for me, I'm like this dad. Sometimes I am super excited when we get here on Sundays to tell you about what's, what we've had on our heart and what we feel like we're trying to share with you. And then maybe we get here, and by the time we're done, you're like, that's not what I came for. That's not what I was actually even asking about at all. It's not what I want. And I only say that specifically because of the series that we're in right now, right? Some of this is tough, right? But today, I love the thing that we're talking about. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And by fun, I mean, you're going to hate it. And I'm just kidding. You're not. You're not going to hate it. But this series that we've been teaching in, we've been looking at this very specific teaching of Jesus, and it's what some of those following him probably would have said, because they said it other times to things similar to this. They said, man, this is a hard teaching, right? Sometimes Jesus would teach, and like people would just leave. And they were like, should we chase him down? Jesus like, nah. He's like, and they're like, but this is hard. And sometimes, as we've been going through this series, some of this is hard for us. And the reason it's hard for us is because it's so countercultural to what we live in. And even regardless of what culture we lived in the United States or any other country, it's so counter to our natural inclinations. Okay, when we talk about things like this, the series is called Self-Denial in an Age of Self. And we've been basing, kind of launching off of a few verses out of the Gospel of Luke. The Gospels are Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the first 4 books in the New Testament, which are the stories of and the teachings of Jesus. And so we've been looking at one of his teachings from Luke chapter 9, and he says this in a few places, but Jesus was talking about what it looked like and meant to follow him and to be his follower. And specifically, we've looked at Luke 9, verse 23, and here's what that verse says. Jesus said, if anyone would come after me or want to follow me, then he must do these things. He must deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. Now, this idea alone, this idea of self-denial, this is hard for us. And here's why. Because we live in a world that says, no, don't deny yourself. In fact, indulge yourself. Whatever feels good, do it. Whatever you want to believe or whatever you want to be true, just claim it and it becomes true. You do you, boo, right? Watch out for number 1. You get yours, and on and on and on. This is just this consumeristic society, selfish, self-centered society and culture that we live in. And so it makes it hard. But then Jesus comes along, and this is no different than it was 2,000 years ago. And so we talked about the disciples fighting over who gets to be first and number 1 and at the center of things. And Jesus says, no. He said, we're not doing that way. Not so with you and with me. Instead, here's what I want you to do. If you're going to follow me, I want you to deny yourself. And by self, he means the self inside of you. A lot of times we say, deny ourselves the things that are coming at us, right? Bad stuff on the outside. Deny ourselves, cookies and donuts and indulging, or whatever it is, my guilty pleasures. No, he's not talking about just the stuff coming from the outside. More so, he's talking about deny yourself, the inside part of you. Any desire, any temptation, anything that you want for yourself that doesn't align with the teachings of Jesus. He says, I want you to deny the self in you that wants anything that doesn't line up with me. That's what I want, because my things are all better. And I want all of my things for you. But if you go chasing your things, you're going to miss out on the things. But that's such a battle for us in our human flesh, because our natural body, it just wants my way and my things and my wants. But Jesus says, no, I want you to deny that. And that's a hard teaching, because it's really hard for us to see the benefit in that sometimes, especially in the short term, because we live in an instantaneous culture. Like, we want it now, we want a quick fix, we want to get it, and we think that's good. But even all of us could probably tell stories where we got the thing we wanted right then, but in the long run, we're like, it's not what I really wanted. It didn't turn out the way I thought. But Jesus knew all this. He's like, no, I've got a better way. And I want that for you, but it starts with denying yourself, because, and the reason that's hard is because this is all we know, right? And it's all our culture encourages is self and selfishness, and it's all that comes to our natural minds. But today we're going to talk about one of the really practical forms of following and carrying out this teaching of denying ourselves that could have incredible implications for you and I, for every single one of us, especially in a very particular arena of our lives. And the lens I want to talk about this through today is, in honor of March Madness, I want to talk about this through the lens of games. I want to talk about, we love games, right? Today I want to talk about games. And I want to talk about one game in particular that falls under the umbrella of what we're tackling in this series. And the teaching that we're going to look at in just a minute comes from a guy named Paul, who was trying to help his friends understand how to carry this out. Now, Paul, I'll give you a quick background on him because we're going to talk about him in a minute. He's a guy who wrote the majority of the New Testament. Most of the New Testament, which is the life of Christ and the beginning of the church that we are part of, that we call the church now. Paul wrote the majority of that New Testament in the form of letters to his friends about the teachings of Jesus and how they could live those out. And Paul was a really practical guy, and he was really practical in how he explained how to live that stuff out. And he did a really good job of like painting word pictures and giving metaphors and things like that for his listeners of what living this out might look like in their daily lives. And so I've always loved reading Paul, but one of my favorite metaphors that Paul will systematically use at different times in his teachings is he would explain things through the lens of like sports or like competition or like games. And that really resonated with me when I was a young Christian, and especially when I was a teenager and in college. I would literally look up like, hey, are there sports verses? There are. There are. And so Paul would do that. And this resonated with me because I love games. I love competing. And most of us like games of some kind. Even if sports isn't your thing, like I love sports, okay? I'm just eating March Madness up because basketball is my game. I love this time of year, even though the Heels aren't in it, okay? It's one of those things where I talked to Hubert Davis this past week, the head coach of Carolina. I called him and he was like, Andrew, here's the deal. We're just giving all the other teams in the nation a chance to catch up. And I said, I got it, Hubert. I understand. And I said, what about Duke? He's like, they'll never catch up. And sorry, Duke fans. Anyway, but I love it. But all of us love it, even if it's not sports. Where's my board game people? Do I have board game people? You like board games? Okay, there's some board game people in here. Okay, what about card games? Where's my card game people? Okay, cards. Where's my rook? There's some rook. I see some rook. Okay, some of you are like, rook? I ain't never heard of that. Don't start. And then this is what's been crazy right now. Our devices, cell phone games, okay? A few years ago, the big one, it may still be big, I don't know. Candy Crush. Do I have Candy Crush people? Okay, your giggle tells me. Okay, Candy Crush. Words with Friends, that was one that used to be starting. Wordle, does anybody Wordle still? We got some Wordle people. There's some Wordlers. There it is. Right, but there's all kinds of those things. I play Yahtzee on my phone all the time. I love Yahtzee because I'm a math nerd guy, and I love the numbers and the dice and whatever. But games, right? When I was growing up, and really still to this day, I would turn anything into a game or a competition. I mean anything. Like eating at our house became a competition. Who could eat the fastest? Like, I was like, slow down, you're going to have a tummy ache. Too late, right? Or who could eat the most? Right, guys? Especially when we have an end-of-year celebration for like a team event. They always got us pizza, okay? And so by the time it was over, like, who can eat the most pieces? Who's got the most crust? And another guy would be like, I don't have any crust. I eat that too. All right? So I would turn anything into competing. Who could run the fastest? If you're just standing around, who could run the fastest? Who could jump the highest? Who could spit the furthest, right? Just do anything. And here's one from my elementary school days. Who could break the most pencils at one time over there? Do you remember this? Do you remember this stupidity right here? Okay, you would take a pencil and lay it across your knuckles and slam it on your knee and see if you could break it. And you got people walking around with broken fingers and knuckles. Teachers calling parents going, I don't know, they were breaking pencils. And it's like, I can break 2. I can break 3. And one time, we slipped one of those giant pencils into the mix with some guy. Anyway, but eraser burns. Do you remember eraser burns? Right, and there was a competition, who could stand it the longest? And you could be like, I did it! My arm's infected, but I did it! Right, it's just terrible. We would do anything. Who could hold your breath longest? Who would try the mystery meat, which ended up being dog food? That was a terrible day for somebody. Anything. Even in my house. You know what my parents' favorite game at my house was? 1, 2, 3, shut mouth. But I don't know why. My mom wanted to play that game all the time. She's like, I got a game. And we all be like, a game? 1, 2, 3, shut mouth. We're like, I always lost. And just like I did just then. We've all got a little bit of that in us, or a lot of bit in us. We love games. We love to play them. We love to watch them, and we love to win them. We love to win, right? And so Paul, he would use this common ground to teach lessons, and it was a way for Paul to help them understand what he was saying. And he would talk about races, and he would talk about fighters, and he would talk about training, and he would use all of these metaphors. Or sometimes he would just present an open-ended challenge that wasn't really even an existing sport or game. He would just challenge people to something, right? And the hope being that among all of these competitive listeners, because we all got a little bit of that in us, even if you say you don't, you do, right? Some of you will compete not to compete. You're like, I'm not a competitor. And you'll just be stubborn. You're like, I don't compete on anything. I'm not even competing right now. Yes, no, I'm not. Yes, no, I'm not. Right? We all have that in us. And so Paul would use this in hopes that those competitive spirits would rise up and say, challenge accepted, right? Especially if they'd say, here, hold my camel juice. Watch this, right? They didn't have Mountain Dew. That's what there was, this camel juice. That's what they used. But, so they would do this. And so today we're going to talk through the lens of games too, in the hopes that we could learn something beneficial, specifically regarding this one arena of our lives where we tend to play a lot of games. So the question is, what arena of life are we talking about? And what specific games have we been playing that we need to stop? And what is that one game that Paul says, if you're going to play one in this arena of life, here's the game I want you to start playing. Well, I'm glad you asked that. Because there's an arena in our lives where when we introduce the wrong games, they can become toxic and super destructive. Yet we do it all the time, sometimes maybe even unintentionally. But that arena of our lives where we end up introducing these games, sometimes we're playing them, is the arena of our relationships. Our relationships, right? Our interactions with people, both people that we know and care about that are close to us, and people that are total strangers. And when certain games begin in our relationships, the relationships themselves are what end up taking the hit. The relationship is what suffers, because when these games begin, nobody actually wins. There's literally, in several of these games, minus one, there is no win in the games. Now, hopefully you already know this, okay? Husbands, we do, but you can't actually win an argument. Do you know that? Husbands, do you know that? Can we just say that out loud? You can't, there's no win. You can't actually win an argument. Did you know that? I mean, you get into an argument with your spouse, or maybe you get into an argument with a friend or a coworker, and all of a sudden a switch flips in you, and there's this need to win the argument because that's who we are. We're winners. And then here's what happens. Maybe at the end of it, we get our way, and maybe we end up getting what we want. But have you ever had this feeling after you got what you wanted, after you argued so hard to make your point, and as you're walking away, you get that feeling that, I don't actually think that I won, right? I don't actually like how things turned out. In fact, things feel worse now than they did before I made my point. You ever walked away from an argument, a challenge in a relationship and felt that way, even though most of the people as bystanders would have declared you the winner, right? That's because when we reduce relationships to us winning, or we reduce it to a competition, everybody starts to lose. Everybody does. So, what are the games that we need to stop or deny ourselves from when they rise up in us? I want to play this. No, we deny ourselves. And what's the one game we should start? Because there is only one that is productive. Well, let me give you a few games that we need to stop. Here's the first game that if we played in our relationships, it can go terribly wrong. You guys are familiar with this game. It's called the change game. Change game, right? And the change game is this. The change game is when there's something about you that I wish was just a little bit more like me, right? That's the change game. Or or there's a response that you have that I wish was more like a response I had, just a little bit. Do you have any relationships like that where if the person was just a little bit more like you, things would probably be a whole lot better? Don't point, you'll give yourselves away, okay? No nudging, okay? But we start to play these games. and just kind of will subtly play them, and I try to get you to change just a little bit. I don't even let you know what I'm doing. Maybe I don't even know I'm doing it. Maybe it's just my natural self going into manipulation mode, but there's something about you that I want to change, and so I play the change game, and I try to manipulate this modification inside of you. And when we do that, the relationship then, it begins to be in trouble and take on stress. Or maybe you have played this game. Maybe yours isn't the change game. Maybe yours is the guessing game. Anybody good at the guessing game? The guessing game can be played in lots of different relationships, but one of the places we see it show up the most is in marriages. It happens a lot in marriages, not in mine, of course, but I'll try to play this, role play this for you this morning. It kind of goes like this, right? You come in, you go, honey, it really seems like something's wrong today, and I just wonder, is there something wrong? And no, nothing's wrong. And you're like, but it just kind of feels like, really it feels like something's off in our relationship. And it's like, well, if I have to tell you, then do you really know me anyway? That's how we start withholding information. We try to make them guess, right? Make them guess and guess. And when we do that, it starts putting our relationship on the line. And this game, it causes all kinds of tension in relationship when we expect the other person to be a mind reader, right? We call it the mind reading game, right? That's another. So here's another one. This is a terrible game that all of us play, and it's called the guilt game. The guilt game. And the guilt game goes like this. I bet there's a relationship where you've experienced this or possibly initiated it, or maybe both, right? And the guilt game goes like this. If you really loved me, then you would start doing blank, right? Or if you really cared about me, if you were really my friend, then you would start doing blank, or you would stop doing blank if you really cared about me. Right? And we start piling on the guilt, and we pile it on, and all of a sudden that relationship begins to break down. That's the guilt game. And then here's another game we play. This game shows up all the time, and it's called the comparison game. You know what the comparison game is? You ever played the comparison game? You do it all the time, just when you're riding around, right? The comparison game sounds like this, especially when it's in a close relationship, maybe in a really close relationship, right? It can sound like, hey, you know what? Well, my dad didn't do it that way. My mom never cooked that way. Right? We never did things that way in my family. It's not how we did it. Or maybe it's more about the stuff exterior. Maybe it's like, have you seen what they drive, what they have? Maybe if you had a job a little bit more like theirs, we would have stuff a little bit better than ours. You start comparing and wanting, and you get in this. Have you seen where they live? Have you seen what they eat, where they eat? Why can't we eat there? Why can't we have that? Why can't I be in? Why can't I go? And me, right? And you get caught up in this cycle of comparison, and especially when it's happening in a back and forth in a relationship, the relationship comes under attack. And then here's another game that this is the last one I want to introduce you to now. There's dozens of these. But this is the assumption game. In the assumption game, I bet you played this one before. You probably don't even know that you're playing it, but I bet you've played this game, and it's subtle, shows up in friendships a lot of times, but it shows up in all kinds of relationships. And the assumption game is this. Instead of believing the best about you, I'm just going to assume the worst. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go ahead and assume the worst. In other words, you do something that doesn't make sense to me, or you do an action that doesn't line up with how I thought you were going to act or respond in a certain situation. And instead of going and finding out why, instead of believing the best about you or trying to understand the why behind what you did, I'm just going to go ahead and assume the worst about you. So I'm going to assume the worst. Now, here's what's fun, because I don't stop there, okay? Because then I'm not only going to assume the worst, but I'm going to go ahead and make up a reason why you did it. And then once I make up the reason why you did what you did that didn't agree with what I thought, then I'm going to assign one of my own emotions to my made-up reason and motive that you did that thing. And then I'm going to experience that emotion, and I'm just going to kind of soak in it for a little while. Right? And I'm going to live there, assuming the worst about you without even knowing if you even know what's happened. And certainly without believing the best. And when we do that, relationships begin to disintegrate and just break down. When we become a person who always focuses on the negative or assumes the worst. Now, when you see these, when you see this list, right, and when we talk about them in reality, and we begin to either experience them as receivers, or certainly if we begin to recognize them in our own lives, that, oh, yeah, I've played some of those at some point, right? It kind of makes you go, ugh. And if we're honest, even though we may not play these games intentionally, most of us could point to one or two or maybe all of them that we have played or that have been played against us in the arena of our relationships, that if we looked at the results, they've always been played to our detriment. They always have negative results. None of these things have victorious results for all the people involved. Ever. Never. Never. These games never win. And those relationships that they've been played in always suffer or sometimes have been lost completely. So, while I doubt in the time that we've got left today that I can totally convince you to quit playing games in your relationships, I would love it if I could, right? But I don't even know if I can convince myself of that. So, instead of that, what I want to do is I want to introduce us to a better game. I want to introduce us to a better game. It's actually an incredible game. It's a game that every single person in this room can play. It's actually a game that every single person in this building, even the kids upstairs, can play. Anyone over the age of 5 can play, kids, adults, all of us. And it's fun to play. It's fun to play at school. It's fun to play at work. It's super fun to play at home. All right, maybe not really. But it's not at first because, again, it goes counter to everything we've been taught and everything we naturally feel. But when you begin to see how powerful this game is, and that the big game has already been won by your Savior, Jesus Christ, and that you don't really have to fight for anything, you just get to follow in his footsteps. When you begin to see how powerful this game is, it actually does become an attractive game to play, and even a game that you'll want to compete, if with nobody else, with yourself at. And here's what's super fascinating about this game to me. This game was introduced to us about 2,000 years ago, and it was introduced in a letter by that guy named Paul that we talked about just a few minutes ago. We said we were going to look at his stuff. And he introduced this to a bunch of his friends and churchgoers in Rome in a letter aptly named Romans. And it's a group of people who were dealing with some really serious problems. And he wrote them a letter introducing them to this new game. Now, we're going to be looking in chapter 12 of Romans. We did a little bit that last week, but Paul's almost done with his letter at this point. We're the ones who put chapters on this. This was just a big manuscript, and so he's getting near the end of his letter. But he goes into, at this point, this super practical teaching on how we should act in our relationships and how we should think of ourselves and how we should think of others. And Josh, like I said, he actually started us in this chapter last week, and we're going to kind of pick up to where he got to and go from there today. And what Paul is doing here is he's saying this. He said, listen, I just spent 11 chapters, okay, the first 11 chapters, telling you how amazing Jesus is and what he has done for you. And because of that now, that you should want to and be excited about following and living for him. But now let me tell you what that looks like. And so the place Paul chooses as he turns over to the really practical teaching in chapter 12, which is one of my favorite chapters in all of Scripture. It's like a mini Bible all packed into this one little chapter, right? Paul takes this, he says, but here's where I want to start. And I want to start with your relationships. And he begins to unpacking some relationship advice as he goes through chapter 12, including this new game, a better way than all these other games. So if you have your Bible, we're going to be in chapter 12, and we're going to start in verse 3 where Josh had us last week. And if you don't have a Bible, don't worry, we're going to put it up. One of you, do not think of yourselves more highly than you ought, which when we boil it all down, this is why we do all these games to begin with anyways, isn't it? Isn't this the problem? That every single one of us, me included, we just kind of think sometimes a little too much of ourselves. Sometimes, maybe all the time. So we start playing these games with people, okay? These very self-centered, these very me-centered games that say, I need you to be more like me. And so even if I have to manipulate the process, this is how I'm going to function in relationships. And it never works. It never works. So Paul says here, so here's where we want to start. Do not think too highly of yourself. That's where I want to start with you, okay? So you're like, oh, this isn't going where I thought it was going to go. I like thinking highly of myself, okay? Then he goes on. He says, but rather, or instead, think of yourselves with sober judgment. Now, this is fascinating to me because Paul's basically saying this. He says, so you guys have a problem. Here is your problem. You think a little too much of yourselves. In fact, you think so much of yourselves that you're actually becoming a little bit drunk on yourselves. Right? You're becoming a little intoxicated with yourselves. And here's why. Because in every relationship, in every one of your relationships, in every one of my relationships, there is this gravitational pull that exists. And do you know what that gravitational pull is to? Ourselves. Right? We like it to always be about us. And you may not even realize this, but in every single one of our relationships, what you're doing is you're hoping that the people who are around you will act a little more like you, will respond to situations a little more like you, will talk a little more like you. It makes it really easy when you're in a yes room, doesn't it? When you're in an echo chamber and everyone agrees with you. It's really simple. We like that. Or that everyone would feel like you. That's what we want. There's this gravitational pull to ourselves. And sometimes it's subtle and you don't even know you're doing it, but deep down, and we would never say this out loud, I hope, right? But deep down, every single one of us, there's this little part of us that thinks this, you know? If everybody were just a little bit more like me, the world would be a better place to be, right? Now, again, we don't say that out loud, or you shouldn't. Okay? Some friendly advice, a little PSA for you there, right? You would never look at your boss and say that out loud. You know, if everybody at this workplace was just a little more like me, this would be a lot better place to work, right? You would never say this to your spouse, look at them and admit it, right? Again, at least you shouldn't, right? You know what would make this relationship better? If you were a little more like me. They're thinking this thing would go down in flames. That's what they're thinking, right? Because they're thinking the same thing. Right? You should never say that out loud, but there's this little pull inside of you and me that says if everybody were just a little bit more like me, the world would be a better place to be. Right? And Paul says that the gravitational pull is so strong that you and I literally become intoxicated, and we're intoxicated with ourselves. And so Paul says, I just need to say that out loud, and then here's what I want to do. Instead of doing that, instead of thinking too highly of yourself, Paul says, I want you to think of yourself with sober judgment. In other words, instead of thinking that if everyone in the world were a little bit more like me, it would be a better place to be, realize that it's actually this. If everybody were more like me, the world would not be a better place. In fact, hey, you know what? Confession's good for the soul. So we're just going to say this together, okay? It's going to be a lot of fun, okay? I'm going to count to 3, and we're just going to say this together, okay? You ready? 1, 2, 3. If everybody were more like me, the world would not be a better place. I didn't feel like you were too excited about that. I thought it was going to feel better for all of us, but I can tell that some of you really don't believe that. It's troubling. That's okay. So, we won't say it again. In other words, you're like, ooh, good, because I don't know if I could get that back out again. In other words, instead of thinking so highly of yourselves, think soberly. When you think soberly, here's what's going to happen. When you start thinking soberly about yourself, when you go, hey, you know what? Maybe it's not great if everybody were like me. When you start thinking that, all of a sudden you begin to think about others differently too. Paul goes on in the next few verses, and he actually compares all of us as a body again. It's one of the other metaphors he uses a lot. He said, we're all a body. And look, you may think that there's parts of the body that are really important and that you're one of them. And there's other parts that aren't important, and so those people don't really matter. He said, actually, those are the parts that should get more respect, more honor. He said, because you've got the ability to do that. He said, but every one of them, you're all important. Every single person that you ever come eyeball to eyeball with is a creation of God, and they matter, and they have value, and they have dignity, and they're important. So he begins to unpack this. And then a few more verses on down that, he says, so instead of thinking highly of yourselves, let me introduce a new and better way, a better game for us to play when it comes to the relationships that we're in. And the only one that we should be playing in our relationships, if we're playing one at all. So we're going to skip down to verse 9. And he begins to give instructions about how we should actually interact and function in these relationships instead of being all about self. He said, actually, here's what you should do. Verse 9, he said, you should love. And it should be sincere. Basically, he's saying this. He's like, love genuinely. Don't be hypocritical. Don't be manipulative. Don't be fake in your love just to get your way. Don't have ulterior motives. Then he goes on. This seems like common sense. He says, here's what else you should do. You should hate what's evil. Not just for you, but for everybody around you. You should help identify those things that are evil, and you should hate them. I'll help you. He said, I'll give you lists. Okay? He said, and then you should cling to things that are good. When you see somebody in a hard place, in a hard way, you should see what they're holding on to. And if it's evil, help them get rid of it. And if it's good, cling to it. Let's hold on to what is good. And then you should be devoted to one another in this action of love and caring for one another. And it's right here where I wonder, right, if Paul kind of stopped. Because he puts a period at the end of this verse right here. And here's what I imagine, okay, this is my imagination. I imagine that he stops, but then I imagine that he asks himself, this is me, is that enough? And when I say that, right, he's going through this. He's going, okay, is that enough? Hate what is evil, cling to what is good, love sincerely. Have I spelled this thing out clearly enough that there's no room for doubt? Don't think too highly of yourself. Instead, think about others. And when you do, love sincerely, hate what's evil, cling to what's good, be devoted, make others more important than yourself. Have I left them no room to argue their way out of this? And then after that, he decides, you know what? I'm going to write one more sentence to go with this part. And I love this sentence because this sentence ties it all together. And it leaves no doubt for how we're going to play this new game. And here's where he introduces it. Here's the sentence. He says this. And then honor one another above yourselves. Honor one another above yourselves. Honor. What a great, powerful word slammed with implications. Right? Honor. In other words, do you really want to get this right in your relationships? Okay, and let's just forget about strangers for a second. Let's forget it. But the people that you care about the most in this world, do you want to get it right? Do you want to build a foundation that will allow those relationships to not just survive, but thrive and grow? And even if there's already tension in those relationships, do you want to leave a door that's open so that there's always a place, even if there's distance, so that there's always room for reunification. There's always room for God to come in and heal and grow. You want to do that? You want to get this right in your relationships? You want to win? Even if other people don't play? You want to know what winning looks like in relationships like your marriage or with your friends? Or, and he's going to go on later and say, even with people that you don't agree with or that don't agree with you. I know, like Paul's like, I know you like to win. But all the other games that you play in these relational settings, winning actually means losing most of the time. The change game never works. The guilt game is brutal. The comparison game, there's never a win in comparison. So here's the new game, and it's called the honor game. It's called the honor game. And at first, it will not feel like you are winning. Let's just get that out of the way. Let's make that super clear. All right? But I promise, especially in those relationships close to you, because that's where you should practice this first, with those people near you. This is a better way, and it will have way better results. And just for emphasis in this verse, here's what's interesting. He doesn't just say, honor one another. He doesn't just say that. He says, right, he adds these last two words for those competitors in the room, right? For those of us who like to compete, like me out there. He says, honor one another above yourself. And then that's huge, right? Those two words. He says, above yourself. Another translation actually says it like this, right? It says, outdo one another in showing honor. Just outdo people. Don't just do it, outdo it. Outdo every other person around you in showing honor to the persons around you. This is the new game. This is it. Paul says you want to win at something, you feel the need to play and win in a way that matters and is actually a win for every single person involved. Well, here you go. New game, the honor game. And the challenge is this: with your words, with your actions, with your thoughts, even with your prayers. Even if the thoughts need to turn into prayers because they're not good thoughts at the times, and you need to pray so that you can help have better thoughts about stuff. So, but with your words, your actions, your thoughts, treat the person across from you not just the way you want to be treated, right? That's the golden rule. Honor is the platinum rule, right? But treat them above that. Treat them better than you want to be treated. And not just if they honor you first. No, 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 no. Paul says this. Says, that's what honor is. You go first. You go first. It's not honor anymore if you're waiting for someone to honor you. It's not honor, right? It's just reciprocation. It's not honor. He said, but don't just honor. And don't just treat others the way you want to be treated, but go above that. Because let's be honest, right? If you treat me good, it's easy for me to treat you good, right? I can do that. If you go first and you show me love, it's really easy for me to show you all the love that I think you need. May still be limited, but it's what I think you need. As long as you go first, that's easy for me to do. If you'll honor me first, I'll show you honor. Paul says, that's not what this is. You go first. And this is so great. I love this. Because the implication is this for all Christians, for all of those new Jesus followers. He said, you go first, and you go first as if you're a guide. You go first as if they're not going to go with you. You go anyway. You go first as if you're leading the way, because a lot of time, in fact, most of the time in this culture right now, you will be. If you choose to play the honor game and you play it with all of your heart and with all your passion, and you choose not just to do it, but to outdo it, a lot of times you will be the only one playing. And it means you will be going first. And Paul says, that's the deal, though. If you want to have unbelievable relationships, you go first. You go first as if you're the guide. Husbands, wives, parents, employers, employees, teachers, kids, students. All of us can play this, and we can all go first. And honoring, it has no bearing on what the other person does or doesn't do. Whether they go with you or not, whether they go first or not, that's what honor is all about. Paul says, we're going to go first, even if nobody else goes. You know that old song you sing, I've decided to follow Jesus, I've decided to follow Jesus, I've decided, right? There's one of the verses, and it says, though none go with me, still I will follow. And if you're following Jesus, this is exactly what Jesus did for all of us. He went first, and he showed us honor. He treated us better than we could have ever expected to be treated by anyone, in creating a path for us to be reconnected to our Creator through salvation, through his cross, his death, his resurrection. It was amazing. And Paul says, if you want to play a game in your relationships, right, then this is the game. It's the honor game where we out-honor one another. And I like saying it this way. It's that simple. You can laugh at that because it's not simple at all, right? It will be difficult. But Paul said, but here's what I want you to practice. I want you to out-honor the person on the other side of you, whether they go with you or not. I want you to go first. And when you do that, you will see things change. Sometimes, one of the things you'll see change is people will follow your lead. They were just waiting for someone to go first. But then they'll begin to play too. It's that powerful. And it forms, when you get two people playing this game, it forms some of the most powerfully strong relationships on earth. When you get two people going at it, trying to out-honor one another. At our house, one of the ways that we would teach or talk about this and honoring is, especially with my sons, we talk to them about, hey, this is how we hold your mom and all women in high regard and respect. And, we would do all, talk to them about opening doors and moving chairs and ladies first. It was one of the things. Ladies first, ladies first, ladies first. And I still believe in that culture of honor, and I love it. And we would do this ladies first, ladies first. What's interesting is Ellie, our youngest, she began to pick up on this. And so then she came in. And so she would then, we would go to the stairs, get ready for bed, and be like, all right, time to go to bed. I said, ladies first. And she would say, boys first. And I said, ladies first. And I would take a step, and she would say, boys first. It would take us 45 minutes to get up the stairs. Ladies first, right? We couldn't even get out the door to the car. Ladies first, boys first, ladies. But I love that. I love that in her little heart, right? There's something growing that's called honor. That we would dare to put someone ahead of ourselves. And guys, ladies, this is why this should be the number one game that we play, not in just relations, but especially for those in marriages, right? Husbands, when you love and honor your wife like Christ did, it will change your marriage and it will set a standard for your kids. Wives, when you love and honor your husband like Christ did, it will change your marriage and it'll set an example for your children that you'll be so thankful that they have someday. When you put their needs above your own, their welfare above your own, their wants, their needs above your own, something incredible happens when one of you goes first. But when both of you begin playing the honor game, my goodness, it's one of the most beautiful things on earth to behold when two people start going at it, trying to out-honor one another, especially in this beautiful covenant of marriage that God's given us. It's amazing, but it's contagious too. Other people want to get involved. I'm so grateful to have gotten to see couples ahead of me who have done this, to have those in my family that have been an example, but it's not easy. It's not easy. And it's not natural. It's something you have to fight for, but it can be learned and it can be done, and it does make a difference, especially when two people try to out-honor each other. Well, what about when the other person doesn't want to play the honor game? This is the fun part of the sermon. Right. Here's the rule. You keep playing anyway. We keep playing anyway. Now, I say that instructively, not as an example, okay? I'm trying. I don't always get this right. Don't interview my family, okay? I don't always do this, but it is the ideal, right? We talk about the ideal and the real. There's this ideal, and then here's what really happens, and in that space, there's grace, and God covers us, and every morning His mercies are new, and we get a new opportunity. But just because there's grace to cover doesn't mean that we should just forget the ideal. Doesn't mean we just throw that away and go, oh, well, I'll just do. It's like Paul said, just because there's grace doesn't mean sin should abound, right? Oh, just go on sin and plenty of grace, right? That's called cheap grace. We cheapen that grace. No, there's still this thing we strive for. And in the honor game, it's that even when people don't play, we keep playing, right? And here's what's important, because sometimes we're like, but I don't want to agree with them. That's not what honor is. Honor's not agreeing with people. Honor's not always affirming what they believe or what they're doing, their actions, their behavior. It just means that I'm making a conscious decision to see you as someone made in the image of God, and I'm going to honor you as a human being made in His image by treating you with respect and kindness and dignity. It doesn't mean that I'll participate in what you're doing. It doesn't mean I'll go unhealthy places. If you ask me to go with you to those places, I probably won't. But it does mean that when we're face to face with my words and my actions, and when we're not face to face with my thoughts, my gossip, right, as in none, and my prayers, I'm going to honor you as someone made by God in the image of God and valued at the value of the life of His Son, Jesus. Again, I'm telling you this instructively. As I'm trying to put this into my own life. Because that's the only game we win. But when we do that, even when other people don't play, the hope is that they get a glimpse of a God who cares about them immensely more than even this small amount of honor I'm trying to show them ever could. And they may never see that, but when we honor others like Jesus did, we open that door for them to experience Him too. And they may not. They may spit in our face. They may mock us. They may run away. But even then, we don't have to be offended. We don't have to react or respond. We just stand firmly in a place and on a foundation of honor because we've been honored in a way that wins this whole thing. So we don't have to fight anymore to win that game. All we have to do is fight for honor. Now, again, I know this sounds easy. I'm just kidding. This is hard, but it's powerful. I want to tell you a quick story, and I want to shut down. I've got a good friend who's older and wiser than myself, and I got to know him several years ago, but one day he was sharing his testimony with me and his Jesus journey with me, and he told me this. There was a point where he had abandoned all faith, and he was in college, and for all intents and purposes, he had become an atheist, an agnostic at best. He's like, I knew I had some faith growing up, and he said, I just totally dismissed it. I abandoned it. But he said that he had this college professor. And he said his college professor, he taught philosophy and he taught religion, and he was a Christian. And he made no bones about it, but he was a Christian. But he was never forceful with his faith on others. He just talked about how God worked in his life. And if people asked him questions, he always answered. And in fact, he said he was always extremely respectful and kind, even when many, including himself, would challenge him, but really in a mocking way in class, or try to find ways to kind of trip him up or make fun of his faith. And but he never got upset, he never got flustered, but he was always respectful. But he always stood firm in his faith, and he just kept pointing for himself to the person of Jesus. But my friend's story was that in the end, it was that professor. It was that professor over the years of college, and the way that he treated him, and he usually said, and the way that he honored our relationship, not just mine, but with others as well, that ultimately led me back to Christ. Right? It was his kindness that led me to redemption. It's a powerful, powerful story. He says, not somebody yelling at me. He says, I had plenty of that when I left the faith to begin with. Not someone trying to manipulate me or guilt me, but simply someone living for and like Jesus in front of me. And the thing that stood out to me the most was how this man had honored him and honored others, even when they disagreed or mocked him. It's powerful. And he said, it turns out that the return in this case for his honoring people was at least one man's salvation. I love it. Right? Now, that may not always happen when we honor people who do not honor us in return. But it might. And our job is not to negotiate outcomes. Our job is to follow in the footsteps of our Savior, Jesus. And honor is one of the things that he did perfectly. In fact, Paul in Romans chapter 5, verse 8, he said this, while we were still sinners in complete opposition to him, here's how he honored us. He died for us, gave his life for us, so that we could have life eternally with him. He honored us. He put our needs, our welfare, our salvation above his own. And if you're a person in this room who has accepted his gift of salvation, just pause for a second and think about what he has done for you. It's incredible. So real quick, here's your homework for this week. Compete. Play a game. But make sure it's this game, that it's the honor game. And look for ways, this week, even when you leave here today, look for ways. It'd be great if we couldn't get people out of the parking lot because you were like, no, you go first. No, you go first. No, you go first. People are like, man, they must be having some service at Village. It's 3 o'clock and that parking lot's still packed. Awesome. No, you go first. No, you shut down the bypass out here, okay? They're like, no, you go. The light's green, dude. Nope, not going. He's got to go. No, okay. Look for ways to honor someone this week above yourself. Husbands, look for ways to honor your wives. Wives, look for ways to honor your husbands. Parents, look for ways to honor your kids. Kids, blow your parents' minds. Honor them. Show up and do one of those chores they're always asking you to do. Just go ahead and get it done. Don't even say anything. Then they'll come down to your room. Hey, you need to clean. What happened in here? Okay, they're going to think someone's kidnapped you and moved in and stole all your stuff. All right? Honor them in some way. Students, honor your teachers, right? Honor people around you. Do it with your words. Do it with your actions. Do it with simple gratitude. A lot of times we tell, and I have to catch myself, a lot of times I tell a lot of other people how great my wife is or how great all these other people in my life are. But I don't tell them. And sometimes you can just honor somebody by saying, hey, do you know what kind of impact you've had on my life? Man, let me tell you a story real quick. It will blow people's minds, and it will make people's day when we honor them in that way. Do something out of the ordinary. Go out of your way and go first. And don't just do what someone else does. Outdo what someone else is maybe already doing or maybe never will do. But outdo everybody in honoring somebody. This is the only game, the honor game, where a win is truly a win. So go out this week and compete. Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, thank you that you made a way for us. Thank you that when you didn't even have to, you went first. And you honored us, God, in a way that we could never outdo. We could never repay. But God, we can follow and we can chase. So let us be people who chase down this competition, who race toward this prize, who train for this goal, and that is to be someone who doesn't just honor others, doesn't just honor them above ourselves, but outdoes everyone else around us in an effort to honor the image and the character of God created inside of them, in the hopes that they grow, that they follow, or maybe they take a next step in the direction of Jesus. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Andrew. I don't really want to be in the parking lot till 3 o'clock, guys. So if you just go, like, honor and then honor, but then green light means go. But no, thanks for that reminder. Thank you so much for being here today with us here at Village. There are yellow cards in the back of your or seats near you. If you have something coming up this week, you're like, man, I really love somebody on my side praying for me, coming alongside me. Our staff and care team would love to do that. If you'll take one of those cards, fill it out, you can drop it in a basket as you leave, and our staff and our care team will be praying for you this week if there's something going on there. Reminder about our big dates coming up. Well, dates coming up: Palm Sunday, April 2nd, and then Easter Sunday. 2 services on the 9th at 9 and 11 here at Village. Hub students, we're here tonight, 6 o'clock. If you're hanging around for a minute and wouldn't mind moving some chairs, we like to leave these first 4 rows and then move all the other chairs off to the side walls. Your help there would be greatly appreciated. But have a fantastic Sunday. Maybe it'll warm up, and we look forward to seeing you back next week. Have a great day.
You gave a heavenly breath, and now it's air in our chest. That's why we're singing it back to you. For every battle you've won, for everything that you've done, and everything that you're gonna do. Seen too much to ever doubt it. Feels so good, I wanna shout it. Yeah, when I really think about it, all I wanna do is glorify your name. We gonna glorify your name. That's why we came to lift your name. Come on and sing. Glorify your name. We gonna glorify your name. That's why we came. change only on the weekend. Yeah, when I get that kind of feeling, ooh, I gotta say, that's why we came, that's why we came, to lift your name. Come on and sing, come on and sing. Glorify your name. That's why we came. Yeah, we were made to lift your name. All the church sing. Every day we're gonna glorify, glorify. Every day we're gonna glorify, glorify. Glorify your name. Remembering when I lived for myself, thinking about only me and no one else. Always trying to fill my cup, still I never felt enough. Still I never felt enough. Then you came along and found me, and now there's not a day when I don't feel a hope I couldn't know without your grace. And now I feel so good, got me dancing like I should. I'm dancing 'cause I feel so fine, got me singing all the time. I'm singing 'cause I know my goals, I'll never be the same. I'm dancing 'cause you made me. I'm dancing 'cause you made me. Made me so brand new, so brand new, so brand new, so brand new. Everything I used to be ain't coming back, no. Now it seems these hollow dreams are in the past. Every day you turn the page, I don't have to